Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. Quick video for you here. Check it out. Look what I got. It is an all-metal valve cover for an E46. This is from an M56 engine, which is basically the same thing as an M54 engine. It's just the super ultra low emission version of it, which means that BMW changed several parts that could potentially cause high emissions, namely, that plastic valve cover which warps and bends and is eventually going to allow vacuum leaks, which is going to be bad for emissions. So, they changed it to a metal valve cover, and it's interesting because, like I said, the valve cover on the M54 engine bends and cracks, which is the problem I've got with mine right now, which you probably all have with yours. You go ahead and change the valve cover gasket, even still after that, it's going to leak oil down onto the side of your engine, and that's kind of a problem I'm having now. Anyway, I've been looking, I've been keeping my eye out for one of these in the junkyard, and of course I found one. Actually, I've been finding a lot of them lately because the junkyard that I go to actually takes pictures of the outside of the engine, the engine compartment, the outside of the car, and the inside of the car, so I can see when one of these actually shows up in the junkyard. And the biggest difference about this valve cover, or about this engine, is the fact that you can't use the same coils from the M54, or at least you can't use the ones from the earlier M54. You'll notice here it's actually a different sort of coil design. You notice they don't actually bolt in. In fact, you wouldn't even be able to fit those, the ones from the M54 on here. This is actually the newer style coil that actually just presses down in and kind of seals itself on. The rubber boot just kind of seals itself on, and they have a different connector to them as well. So you would actually need to get, if you were at the junkyard, you would need to get the different harness. So you would actually have to go and unplug it from the engine computer as well, which I didn't do because somebody had already taken the coils from this one. So I'm not going to use this one after all. I just thought it would be kind of interesting to take a look at it though, and maybe sort of take it apart and or analyze it. One thing you'll notice is it looks like there are two different oil caps. It's actually not two different oil caps. This is the oil cap here, which kind of stays onto the valve cover. This is the cover for the oil separator, the diaphragm that we see in the oil separator on the M54 engine. It's buried underneath the intake manifold. It's integrated into the valve cover on this one. And immediately one thing I noticed is that there is a part number for this, but you can't actually buy it. It's just not listed anywhere. You can't find it on eBay. You can't find it at the dealer. If you want to replace this, if you want to do any kind of service to the diaphragm, you have to replace the entire valve cover, which of course is over $500 because BMW, right? The other thing that's different is, this sits like this in the engine. The other thing that's different is the engine cover is actually going to be a one-piece cover design, and you see these little studs right here. It actually just kind of fits down over it. It doesn't bolt down to it. So if you want to switch to this, you're actually going to need the fuel rail that comes from the M56 as well, because it has these little posts on it. If that is, you want to use the engine cover. It's easiest just not to use the engine cover at all. But if you want to use this, you have to get that fuel rail, and you can't really use that fuel rail because it's got different fuel injectors, because that's also an emissions thing. Those fuel injectors kind of screw down into, or screw up into, the fuel rail. So that's something that's different as well. Just, there are a number of things that are just a little bit different that kind of prevent you from just straight, buying one of these off of eBay and switching over to it. So that's, again, why I'm not going to use it. And I've just decided to sort of take this thing apart in this video for the purposes of this video. One thing you'll notice here is, look at all the schmoo on this thing. I mean, it's just nasty. I don't know if that's just a lack of maintenance, or if that's the fact that, BMWs kind of run a little hot, particularly in the valve cover area. They're not, they're only cooled where it counts. So, it's, they get kind of hot. And I don't know if this person didn't change their oil regularly. I don't remember what the inside of this engine looked like, to be honest with you, because I got this quite a while ago. But these are all T30s, and I figured I would see if I can take these apart, or take this apart, and just so we can see what this thing is made of. I think maybe before I do this part, I'll just show you what the diaphragm looks like One other thing I want to mention that I noticed about this, you'll see this little tab is sort of broken off down here. You're supposed to be able to, you know, this is made for like a screwdriver. Well, that was the design of it. This was made for a screwdriver to be able to sort of bend it outwards so that you can get it up past these little tabs right here. But of course, this is brittle after so many miles that it's just impossible to actually, you know, bend this out without breaking these little tabs. And you know, I've broken every single one of them already. So this, you know, once you take this off, it's really, it's just done. So I figured it's all right. You know, it's for the sake of a video. I'm just gonna get this off so we can see what's inside of it. Boom. And that's what it looks like. It's almost identical to the inside of the regular oil separator on an M54. It's just got that little diaphragm. It's going to work exactly in the same way. If you're unfamiliar with how the CCV system works on an M54, I've got a video for that. I will link it up here on the screen in a little card. It should be right there, I think. Right there, right? Yeah. So, you know, little diaphragm, it's very similar. This one's actually got sort of a rigid metal thing inside of it, but the system is going to work very similarly in that it's going to do all of the oil separation stuff inside of the valve cover. And in that case, what actually is going to happen is you're going to the engine is going to provide full vacuum to this port. There's just a little tube that connects it directly to the intake manifold, and it's right up where you can get at it. So it makes maintenance pretty easy, but I mean, look at how much schmoo there is inside of this thing, and there's going to be a bunch inside this port here. And it, you know, if this thing gets clogged up, it's going to be that much more difficult to actually get it cleaned. So, you know, that is one of the major downsides, I think, to this valve cover. It's nice that it's all metal and it's all aluminum, and it's not going to warp as easily as the plastic ones, but as far as maintenance goes, it's not that great. Okay, I've got all the bolts removed, I do believe. And let's see what this looks like. Okay, just a chamber that's covered. There's a gasket on here, so that's going to be sealed. That's going to be the side of the chamber that, well, let's see, I don't know. We'll have to take a look at what it looks like on the other side again. This one also has a gasket, so that'll be the inside crankcase, and this will probably be, yeah, this is obviously the vacuum source coming from the engine. So that vacuum source is going straight into this little chamber here, and it's going up through the center port, hitting the hitting the little diaphragm, and then bypassing the diaphragm and then going into the crankcase, and that just represents the two different chambers of the whole oil separator system. And one other thing I want to point out with this that you may or may not have realized already is that the one thing you can't do with this that you can do with an M54 is you cannot apply vacuum directly to the crankcase, directly on this side of the diaphragm, and you can, which you are going to do if you want to do the O2 pilot mod and you know, control the oil consumption problem that you're going to have with these engines. You're going to have that same problem with the M56 as you have with the M54, those worn down piston rings, or oil control rings, I should say. You know, with the oil separator on an M54, there's a little port that you can plug a vacuum line into, and you can apply, you know, higher vacuum to the crankcase and control your oil consumption. You're not going to be able to do that with this particular valve cover. So if you have an M56 engine, you are SOL, as they say. So of course, if you're unfamiliar with how the whole CCV system works, full vacuum is going to be applied here to that first chamber, and it's going to be sucking the blow-by gases up through this port and then in through this small port right here, and then out through the vacuum cover. But of course, this diaphragm exists here to regulate that down so that you don't actually, you're not, you know, by design, you don't have full vacuum being applied to the crankcase, because that would actually cause too much oil to get sucked through here, through this port, and then down through the center port and up into the intake manifold. So they put this diaphragm here in order to regulate that. And, you know, the vacuum is going to pull this thing closed, the spring is going to push it open just a little bit. And then of course, when the engine revs up and the vacuum reduces, the diaphragm will get pushed up by the spring, and that'll let more blow-by gases through the diaphragm and into the hole, and then out into the intake manifold to get recycled. And so the three little pipes on this cover right here, that's going to be how the blow-by gases actually get into this chamber right here, and then actually get into the little diaphragm area, and then eventually make it through this hole right here, and then get sucked through into the intake manifold to get recycled. In case anybody's wondering, that is the part number, or those are the numbers on the little cap anyway. You know, something just occurred to me. This is the oil separator cover from an M54. They look pretty similar, but I think this one's actually going to be a little bit smaller, of course, right? Because BMW. So that one is probably not going to stay at all. So no go on that one, just in case anybody was wondering. So there you go. Yeah, M56 valve cover, basically junk. So yeah, it'll get recycled because it's aluminum, and I will figure out some other solution for my sort of leaky M54 plastic warped valve cover. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, throw me a subscribe. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.